Imagine an organization that sells you insurance, but its main goal isn't really about maximizing profit.
Right.
Instead, it's run by its members, and its core mission is actually strengthening your local community. What is this unique blend of finance and civic action?
Yeah.
It's got really deep roots in American history.
That sounds like a fascinating model. It feels, quite different from the typical corporate setups we mostly see today. A mix of mutual support and community focus.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're doing a deep dive into today.
Right.
The world of fraternal benefit societies in the United States.
Right. And based on the sources we've looked at, we can define these pretty simply. They're not-for-profit mutual aid organizations.
Okay.
What makes them distinct, though, is they have to have a fraternal purpose, operate under a lodge system, and importantly, they provide insurance to their members and families.
Right. And these aren't just like historical footnotes. They are active organizations right now with names you might even recognize, like Modern Woodmen or the Knights of Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Our sources give us a look at their significant economic impact, their crucial historical role. And they offer a really interesting comparison to traditional insurance companies.
And that comparison has some important wrinkles, you could say.
Yeah, definitely. So our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack what makes these societies unique. We want to shine a light on their contributions, which are often overlooked, I think, and explore what they look like today, considering the challenges they face.
Let's unpack this then.
Let's do it.
So let's start right at the beginning. What exactly are fraternal benefit societies? You mentioned that core definition.
Yes, the sources lay out these sort of foundational pillars. First, they are strictly not-for-profit. They operate on a mutual aid basis.
Okay, mutual aid.
Meaning they exist for the benefit of their members, not, outside shareholders. Second, they have to have a defined fraternal purpose rooted in some kind of common bond.
Right, that bond. Third, they operate under a lodge system. That's their local structure. And fourth, they're actually required by law to provide insurance or other financial benefits to members and their families. All four elements have to be there for an organization to count as a fraternal benefit society, especially for their tax status.
That fraternal purpose and common bond part, that feels like the non-financial heart of it.
Yeah.
What does that really mean, according to the sources?
Well, the sources really emphasize that this common bond isn't just like a casual thing. It brings together like-minded people, often based on shared values, maybe beliefs or interests, specifically for the purpose of helping others and strengthening their communities. It's about members coming together with a shared intention, mutual support, collective action. It goes beyond just getting an insurance check. This shared purpose, it really underpins all their community work.
And the lodge system, you called it the operational backbone. How does that actually work?
Oh, the lodge system is absolutely central. It's how they deliver that fraternal mission. Think of it like a network of local chapters or branches. Okay. The charitable activities, the volunteer work, community support, all that stuff is organized and driven through these local lodges.
Ah, so it's local.
Exactly. And the sources highlight that this allows activities to be really rooted in the specific needs that local members see in their own neighborhoods, their own towns. They use that on-the-ground knowledge.
So it's not some directive coming down from a national office.
Right. It's not top-down. It's empowered local action. The local members see a need, and the lodge structure gives them the vehicle to address it.
Makes sense.
And the national organization, well, they provide the structure, the resources, maybe matching funds sometimes, to support and kind of amplify those local efforts. It's the synergy, local energy, national support. That's how they have a consistent impact.
Now let's talk about the insurance piece. Because selling insurance products, that sounds pretty commercial.
Yeah.
How does that fit into this not-for-profit, community-focused thing?
This is really the unique blend, and the sources are very clear here. Providing insurance products isn't just like another service alongside the community stuff.
Okay.
It's the engine that powers the community work. Under their specific tax status, usually Section 501c8, of the IRS code, the money generated from selling insurance to members is what lets them fund their charitable, educational, social, all those other purposes.
So the insurance operation is legally necessary for them.
It's necessary for that tax status, yeah. And that status lets them direct resources towards their fraternal mission in a way that, a regular for-profit company just can't.
That's a really crucial distinction then. The insurance isn't separate from the mission. It's fundamental to it. It's insurance for the community work.
Exactly. And this whole model lets them contribute in two ways. First, the direct stuff, money donated, all those volunteer hours members put in, tangible things.
Right.
But then there's this incredibly valuable, though maybe less visible, indirect benefit. Deepening community bonds, fostering trust, cooperation, basically building social capital.
That phrase, again, social capital, it keeps coming up as a major contribution. We definitely need to dig into that. But first, let's stick with the financial side for just a minute, because the sources, especially that main Bureau of Insurance letter and the forum discussion you mentioned, they really highlight some key differences between fraternal insurance and, well, traditional insurance.
Yeah, this is a critical area. If you're thinking about a fraternal product, you really need to understand this. Fraternals sell what the sources often call insurance certificates, not policies.
Certificates versus policies.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like jargon, but you're saying the sources show it has real implications for the person buying it.
Absolutely. That main Bureau of Insurance letter, it's pretty explicit. Fraternal Benefit Societies, well, they aren't subject to the full scope of state insurance codes.
Okay.
So that means a lot of the standard consumer protections, the disclosures, the rights you expect with traditional insurance, they might not apply to a fraternal certificate, not unless the law specifically says they do. That's a big difference right there.
Okay, so potentially fewer consumer protections right off the bat. What's the most important distinction the sources point out?
The sources, especially that main letter, they hammer home one critical feature. Fraternal insurance benefits are legally required to be accessible.
Accessible. Okay, let's break that down. What does that mean for someone holding one of these certificates?
In plain English, it means if the fraternal society hits financial trouble, if its ability to pay claims gets impaired, like they don't have enough money to cover obligations,
Right.
members might be required to pay an additional amount, their share, basically, to cover that deficiency.
Wow.
The sources explain this is tied to their history, as mutual benevolent societies where members pooled resources and shared risk directly. You're not just a customer, you're part of the mutual pool.
So if the society runs into financial problems, the members could actually get a bill. That sounds fundamentally different from standard life insurance where my premiums are fixed. They're non-accessible, right?
Yeah. It is a major, major difference. A traditional policy from a commercial insurer is generally non-accessible. Your premiums are set, the insurer bears the risk. With a fraternal certificate, that risk is shared back with the members in a potential assessment situation. And the main Bureau of Insurance letter stresses this isn't some minor detail, it's a material difference. Agents selling these products must understand it and clearly tell consumers so they can make an informed choice.
Are there other regulatory differences mentioned? Or structural ones?
Yes. The sources point out that fraternals often have significantly lower capital and surplus requirements compared to traditional insurance companies.
Capital and surplus. That's like their financial cushion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the buffer an insurer holds above its liabilities to handle unexpected losses. Lower requirements mean, well, a smaller cushion. The main letter also notes that fraternals generally aren't rated by the big financial strength agencies like AM Best, or if they are, the way they're rated might be different.
Okay, so from the regulatory view in the sources, you've got potentially fewer consumer protections, maybe a smaller required financial cushion, and this risk of assessment. That definitely paints a different risk picture compared to a traditional, fully regulated, highly capitalized insurer.
That's the perspective strongly presented in that regulatory source, yeah. And it was echoed in that agent forum discussion, too. One agent specifically said they felt uncomfortable selling fraternal certificates exactly because of this lack of state guarantee fund protection and the assessment potential.
Okay, what about the state guarantee funds? What are those, and why is not having that coverage significant?
State guarantee funds are basically a safety net for policyholders of traditional insurance companies. If a licensed insurer goes belly up, the state guarantee fund steps in. It's funded by assessments on the solvent insurers.
Okay.
And it pays covered claims up to a certain limit, often hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a key layer of consumer protection. But fraternal benefit societies, because they're often regulated under separate laws, are typically not members of these guarantee funds.
Meaning their certificate holders wouldn't have that protection if the society failed.
That's the implication. They wouldn't have that backstop. This was a major concern raised in the agent forum and by the main bureau.
So if a fraternal society did become insolvent, members wouldn't have that state guarantee for their claims or cash values like they would with a traditional insurer.
That seems to be the situation based on these sources, yes. The agent forum mentions some arguments people make, like saying nonprofits have strict reserves or limited products reduce risk. But the main regulatory letter explicitly warns agents against claiming that things like reinsurance or other factors somehow cancel out the accessibility and the lack of guarantee fund protection. The regulatory view is clear. These are fundamental differences consumers need to know.
This really underscores why understanding exactly what you're buying is so important. The agent forum mentions specific fraternal groups that issue these certificates, didn't it?
Yes. The agent named some well-known ones: Foresters, Royal Neighbors, Woodmen of America, Knights of Columbus, as examples of organizations issuing certificates under these fraternal regulations.
And there was that interesting point about AARP certificates in the forum, that they're often covered by guarantee funds. How does that work if fraternals generally aren't?
Yeah, that's a really important nuance that came up. While AARP might market insurance using its name and call it a certificate, that coverage is usually underwritten by a big, traditional, for-profit insurance carrier. The example given was United Healthcare.
Okay.
So in that case, the certificate holder's protection, including the guarantee fund coverage, comes from the strength and regulation of the underwriting carrier, which is part of the state guarantee fund system. It's not coming from AARP itself or a true fraternal structure.
So you really have to look past the brand name to see who's actually backing the coverage.
Absolutely. It highlights the difference between a true fraternal benefit society and a traditional insurer just using a similar format name.
Okay. So while the insurance part is complex, and it has these distinct structural differences, maybe some risks, it's explicitly presented in the sources as the financial foundation, the thing that enables the other side of their mission, building community and social capital.
Exactly. The money from the insurance operation is the fuel. But the real work, the hands-on impact, that happens through the fraternal purpose and that local lodge system we talked about.
Right.
The sources really detail how members at the local level are the driving force. They're embedded in their communities, involved in schools, churches, local charities. That gives them firsthand knowledge of where the needs actually are.
So they see a need locally, and the national organization provides the backup.
Yeah, it's that combination. The national body gives the framework, the legal help, financial expertise, maybe grant money or matching funds. But the projects themselves, the actual initiatives, they often start from local observation, local initiative. And this consistent pattern, locally driven, nationally supported, results in measurable benefits for society.
This brings us back to social capital. One source really dives into this, referencing Robert Putnam.
Yes, Robert Putnam, famous for bowling alone. He defined social capital as the connections among individual social networks and the norms of reciprocity and trustworthiness that arise from them.
Okay.
Think of it as the collective value that's embedded in our social networks and the inclination for people to do things for each other because of those connections. It's like the glue holding communities together, making them work effectively.
And why is building this social capital so important, according to the research you looked at?
The research presented shows a really strong link between high levels of social capital in a community and lots of positive outcomes. When people are connected, when they trust each other, have those norms of reciprocity, it just makes cooperation easier.
What kind of tangible outcomes are we talking about?
The impacts mentioned are pretty extensive and long-lasting. Communities with more social capital tend to have stronger economic growth, better public health, higher levels of personal satisfaction among residents. They find it easier to tackle collective problems. They're better at overcoming those situations where individual self-interest might clash with the common good, and information flows better through those established networks.
That's a powerful set of benefits. And the sources mentioned a specific link between social capital and education, right?
They do. Education is pointed out as one of the strongest ways to develop social capital. Partly through skills learned in group work, collaborative stuff activities, very similar to what happens in a fraternal lodge, actually. The sources show that higher education doesn't just help the individual better income, job satisfaction. It also correlates with better decision-making and more civic engagement. Communities with more social capital tend to have better educational outcomes for their kids. Historically, they were quicker to set up public schools, too.
Interesting.
And there's this positive peer effect. More educated or civically engaged people positively influence those around them. Kind of like how having attentive classmates helps everyone learn better.
So when fraternal members are out there volunteering, organizing events, participating in lodge activities, they're not just delivering a service like, say, cleaning a park. They're actively building the underlying connections, the trust, the cooperation norms that make the whole community stronger in lots of ways, including education.
Exactly. And this creates what economists call a positive externality. Their activities produce benefits that spill over, improve conditions for everyone in the community, not just the members. And this kind of grassroots contribution, driven by member energy, shared values, local knowledge, it's incredibly hard and expensive to replicate through, say, government programs or purely commercial efforts.
What's fascinating here is the sources acknowledge the value of diversity within communities, obviously, but they also highlight the distinct benefits that come from groups of like-minded people with a shared purpose coming together and acting collectively. That's the essence of the fraternal model. It's not an either situation, it seems.
It's a nuanced point, yeah. But the sources make a strong case that the ability for people with a common bond to organize effectively for a shared good through structures like these lodges generates a specific kind of social capital that has real positive effects.
Let's look at some concrete examples from the sources. How does this translate into real help on the ground?
Oh, the examples are numerous, and they often show that local knowledge piece really clearly. Like Knights of Columbus councils in Florida, they saw a need to support special needs students in local schools, so they organized programs to help.
Right.
Another one in Anaheim, California. A local Knights council found out that kids getting dialysis treatments at a hospital didn't have much to distract them, so they acted. Donated thousands of dollars worth of entertainment stuff, TVs, tablets, video games.
Those are really direct responses to specific needs they identified right there.
Exactly. Highly targeted because the people identifying them live and work there. Another great example, Thrivent members in the upper Midwest. They saw that rural areas often had big hunger challenges, but local food banks lacked refrigerated storage. Couldn't take much fresh produce.
That's a specific problem.
Right. So this local insight led to the Homegrown Help Truck initiative. Thrivent funded a refrigerated truck, and local members volunteered thousands of hours to coordinate distribution, getting fresh food to underserved rural spots.
That really shows how local knowledge gets leveraged by national resources. Creates something really effective.
Absolutely. It's that combination. Grassroots identification, organizational capacity. The sources also highlight how capable they are in crisis response.
They can mobilize fast.
Yeah, because they have these established local structures and networks already in place. They can often be among the first responders. Knights councils near Denver helped during floods, providing volunteers with trucks for hauling sandbags and supplies. Thrivent members in North Dakota mobilized quickly during floods there, too, collected $84,000 in funds, volunteered tons of hours doing hands-on relief, sandbagging, making meals, helping people clean up damaged homes.
And they seem particularly effective in smaller communities, maybe.
The example from Eureka, South Dakota is really powerful. A tornado hit parts of the town pretty hard. Members from both modern Woodmen and Thrivent chapters worked together. They put on a benefit dinner and talent show.
Oh, wow.
It raised over $75,000, which is amazing. But just as importantly, it served as this crucial event for bringing the whole community together, for mutual support, for comfort. The sources emphasize that, yeah, money helps, but creating that space for the community to grieve and support each other is vital. And the fraternals provided that structure.
The Knights also played a role after the tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut, didn't they?
Yes, the local Knights Council was involved immediately, providing comfort and aid. Then the national organization stepped in with a big $100,000 donation, ensuring there was sustained support long after the initial national spotlight faded. The sources note that while support came from everywhere, the fraternal's existing infrastructure allowed for a more organized, enduring response focused on rebuilding the community after that kind of trauma.
Beyond crisis relief, education is another big focus area mentioned.
Oh yeah, it's a cornerstone for many of them. Woodmen of the World has a long history of patriotic education, distributing handbooks on American history, civic traditions to kids and new citizens. Modern Woodmen runs nationwide educational programs. They provide materials on things like financial literacy, patriotism, health, nutrition. to schools, youth groups. They estimate it impacts something like 2 million children every year.
2 million children annually getting educational materials. That's a pretty substantial reach for groups often just thought of for insurance.
It really is. And Thrivent has made a big commitment to financial education, too, offering workshops, supporting community financial centers, aimed specifically at helping low-income families build financial literacy and stability. They've gotten national recognition for those programs.
Youth engagement seems key, too.
Absolutely. They often organize sports leagues, summer camps. Woodmen of the World has overnight camps focusing on character and citizenship, and they keep costs low through subsidies. The Knights in College Park, Maryland, host summer camps.
No.
Nationally, the Knights run the Coats for Kids program. Distributed over 42,000 new winter coats in just 1 year recently. They also actively support local food pantries, soup kitchens, often combining fundraising with direct volunteering.
The Modern Woodmen 2022 report you mentioned had even more specific examples of member-driven programs.
Yes, that report gives a great snapshot of the variety of things happening locally. They highlighted initiatives on mental health awareness chapters, organizing events, putting together kindness kits for support groups, fundraising.
Kindness kits.
Yeah, things to provide comfort or support. They also have Hometown Hero Awards, recognizing local volunteers in that space. They have creative programs like What's in the Box, sends members surprise items and activity ideas to spark engagement. And Modern Woodmen Travels combines trips with chances for community impact projects.
And they offer specific financial benefits and grants right to members for their volunteer work.
Yeah, that report detailed programs like Dia Good Grants, giving members $200 checks for approved personal volunteer projects, kind of boosting their own efforts. They also offer specific member benefits like a newborn benefit, an orphan benefit, terminal illness interest relief,
Wow.
a birthday book club for kids, make an impact scholarships. They awarded like $450,000 to students in that report year, a fraternal aid fund to help members in financial trouble cover their premiums, and a matching fund program. They matched over $5.2 million in member donations for charities that year.
That's significant matching.
It is. They even did a world record attempt, longest carabiner chain, specifically as a fundraiser for NAMI Colorado, a mental health group. Raised over $22,000 doing that.
That range of activities, from small local grants to huge matching programs, educational stuff, it really shows how that financial engine translates into diverse community impact. And the sources actually try to put a number on the overall economic impact of all this.
Yes, there's a report, the Swaggle report, that did a fascinating economic analysis. It estimated the direct economic impact from fraternal activities between 2007 and 2011.
Okay.
That included $2.4 billion in direct charitable donations and $7.9 billion in the calculated value of volunteer time, totaling $10.3 billion over 5 years.
Over $10 billion in direct charity and volunteer work in just 5 years. That's substantial.
But the report went further. It tried to quantify the indirect impact, the value created by the social capital built through all that volunteerism.
How do they even measure that?
Well, they calculated that the 383.9 million hours of volunteer work during that time were economically equivalent to giving 318,325 additional kids a full year of education based on standard school hours.
They link the social capital from volunteering to educational attainment. Interesting approach.
It is. Then they assigned an economic value to that educational boost based on projected increases in lifetime earnings potential. This indirect impact from the social capital fostered by volunteering was estimated at $8.6 billion over that same 5-year period.
So add the direct and indirect impacts together.
The total estimated economic impact of fraternal benefit societies was calculated at $18.9 billion over those 5 years. That averages out to about $3.8 billion a year.
That is a staggering number. It really demonstrates a massive contribution to the U.S. economy and society. And the sources connect this impact directly back to their unique financial model, their tax status.
They do. The argument presented is that this ability to generate and deploy such huge resources for community benefit is fundamentally enabled by their 501c8 tax status. That lets them earn income from insurance without being taxed on it, provided it's used for their exempt purposes: charitable, educational, social, religious.
Right.
They cite a 1993 Treasury Department report that concluded this huge charitable impact would be, quote, near impossible to continue without the current tax rules in place.
And how do they frame the return on this public investment, the tax break?
The sources argue that based on an estimated $50 million a year in foregone federal tax revenue from their status, citing a government estimate and applying it forward, The $3.8 billion in annual benefits represents something like a 76-fold return on that investment to society.
A 76-fold return.
Yeah. They argue fraternals don't unfairly compete with taxable insurers because any profit they make goes back into fulfilling their mission, and that mission provides this enormous societal benefit.
That analysis really paints a powerful economic picture of the value these unique organizations generate.
It really highlights how their hybrid model, using financial mutual aid to empower local community action, creates value that goes way beyond just their own membership.
Let's zoom out for a bit then and look at the history. Where did this whole model even come from?
The sources trace it back to the colonists, influenced by European models, particularly the ideals of groups like the Masonic lodges. Many of America's founders were Masons, actually. These groups promoted Enlightenment ideals, equality, reason, natural law, which are noted as even influencing the philosophical basis of the U.S. itself.
And America quickly became known as this nation of joiners, right? Alexis de Tocqueville observed that back in the 19th century.
Yes, Tocqueville was amazed by just how many voluntary associations there were in America. Fraternal, religious, civic. He saw them as absolutely essential for democracy to function, for making communities strong. Congress even granted a federal charter to the Knights of Pythias in 1864, recognizing their role.
Was there a peak period for their influence? A golden age?
Yeah, the sources refer to the era roughly from the 1870s to the 1930s as the golden age of fraternity in America. During that time, over a third of all adult men in the U.S. belonged to at least one fraternal order.
Wow, a third of men.
Yeah, they were crucial institutions, providing a vital social safety net insurance, burial help, support for widows and orphans back when government welfare programs were tiny or non-existent. Mutual aid was core, but some groups were also used for political or business networking alongside the charity stuff.
You mentioned earlier the modern Woodmen example had restrictions on membership. Was that kind of exclusivity common back then?
Yes. Unfortunately, it was very common. It reflected the societal norms and, frankly, prejudices of the time. Early modern Woodmen, for instance, was restricted to white males, certain ages, certain states, excluded professions deemed too risky or morally undesirable, like railway workers or saloon keepers. That kind of selectivity, race, gender, occupation, sometimes religion, was typical of many mainstream white fraternal orders.
So how did issues of inclusivity and the fight for equality intersect with these groups? It sounds complicated.
It is complex and often contradictory. While many dominant white groups were exclusionary, the desire for mutual aid and community wasn't limited. When black men were denied membership in white lodges, they formed their own powerful, vibrant fraternal orders.
Okay.
Similarly, auxiliary groups were formed for white women associated with the male orders, like the Eastern Star for Masons, Daughters of Rebecca for Odd Fellows.
But these auxiliary groups, they weren't always equal partners, were they?
No, especially within the white fraternal system. Women's auxiliaries were often subordinate. Men often still held leadership roles within the women's groups, and women couldn't join the main decision-making lodges.
Right.
However, the sources do highlight exceptions, like the Independent Order of St. Luke, a major African-American mutual aid society. It stands out for admitting men and women equally, and it played a huge role not just in insurance, but in community development, starting banks, newspapers, stores.
So women often had a more prominent, maybe more equal role in African-American fraternalism.
The sources suggest that was often the case, partly because of the central leadership role women played in black churches and also economic realities. Black women were frequently breadwinners, making them essential players in mutual aid and economic efforts.
Makes sense.
The Ladies of the Maccabees, an all-female white group, is also noted as an exception. They were independent, focused on self-reliance, and actively supported progressive causes like suffrage and temperance. So not all women's groups were just satellites.
And how did politics and patriotism fit in?
Well, most fraternal orders officially tried to stay nonpartisan, to keep harmony among members from different political stripes. But of course, members were politically active individuals, and the groups themselves often promoted a pretty zealous patriotism. The sources mention historical intersections, sometimes negative ones, like the anti-Masonic Party in the 1830s, born out of suspicion towards secret societies, or the nativist Know-Nothing Party in the mid-19th century, which had fraternal-like aspects. But crucially, African-American fraternal orders were often explicitly tied to the struggle for civil rights, actively organizing against slavery before the Civil War and Jim Crow laws after.
So they were really deeply woven into the social, political, economic fabric of the nation throughout its history.
Absolutely. They weren't just cutting checks. They were shaping communities, reflecting divisions, and sometimes actively fighting to overcome those divisions.
Okay, that takes us up to the point where the sources start talking about challenging times. A significant decline in membership and influence.
Yes, that golden age started to fade around the 1930s. The Great Depression put huge financial strain on these mutual aid models, and the decline has pretty much continued ever since, maybe with a brief pause or uptick in the 1950s. The sources point to a whole bunch of interconnected reasons for this.
What were some of the main drivers behind people shifting away from fraternal life?
Well, beyond the economy, big cultural and technological shifts played a massive role. Fraternal societies, frankly, struggled to adapt to changing lifestyles, changing expectations. The sources mention a decline in general trust in large institutions, maybe made worse by things like the Vietnam War era. People became less willing to commit large chunks of volunteer time, often preferring just nominal membership over getting really involved.
And the passing of a particular generation seems important here.
Very much so. The sources talk about the passing of the long civic generation, people born roughly in the 1920s. They were just uniquely characterized by high levels of civic engagement, joining voluntary groups like fraternals, their kids and grandkids. Less inclined to join these kinds of groups or to participate as actively if they did.
Right.
This has led to an acceleration of membership decline in the 21st century. Groups like the Masons, JCs, Rotary, all experiencing significant drops.
A reluctance to take on leadership roles, challenges with keeping members. Those are mentioned too.
Yes, sustaining leadership, maintaining loyalty long-term became harder. The sources also suggest a shift away from community-rooted groups like unions and fraternals towards more career-focused professional associations. And changes in households, more women in the workforce, more single-person households just meant less available time for traditional evening lodge meetings and volunteering.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The sources, especially referencing Putnam's work, point to the impact of the electronic revolution, even before the internet.
Yeah, Putnam famously argued that television, starting in the 50s and becoming widespread, was a major factor in declining civic engagement. It basically replaced time people used to spend socializing or participating in community groups with passive, solitary viewing. Early political scientists also predicted that new communication tech could lead to societal fragmentation.
And then came the internet and social media, which have only accelerated that fragmentation in some ways.
Well, the sources describe social media's role as kind of conflicting. On one hand, yeah, it lets people connect across distance, gives voice to diverse communities, but it can also further replace face-to-face interaction, create echo chambers, and, as we've definitely seen, fuel divisiveness and polarization.
Which leads to that surprising observation mentioned in one of the sources.
Yes. That members of modern fraternal groups often report finding a sense of calm, a kind of non-divisive community within their lodges, which is really striking when you compare it to the increasingly polarized broader society. They appreciate having a space to connect with others who share a common purpose without constant political or ideological fighting.
So despite the overall decline, that core appeal, in-person connection, shared purpose, it might still resonate. Maybe even more so today.
Some groups have successfully adapted. The Hoo-Hoo, for example, turned into more of a trade organization, but kept some fraternal traditions. While the overall trend is decline, the sources don't totally write them off. They pose some important questions about their current relevance and potential future.
What are some of those key research questions that one source laid out?
They ask things like, do fraternal benefit societies still serve a vital function today? Or are they becoming kind of insular, maybe even tribal? Can they still play a meaningful role in shaping identity and belonging in our fragmented world? Given all the talk about loneliness and lack of connection in the digital age, could that lodge-based model offer valuable in-person interaction people are missing? How might these groups contribute to a potential revival of civic engagement? And maybe most crucially, what fundamental changes do they need to make to actually appeal to younger generations now?
Those are definitely challenging questions for organizations with such deep historical roots, such traditional structures.
They are, but they also highlight the potential value that this unique blend, mutual aid, community service, in-person connection, the value that the fraternal model could offer in addressing some of our current social challenges.
Well, this has been a really comprehensive deep dive into fraternal benefit societies. We've explored these organizations that uniquely blend providing insurance with a core mission of community service and mutual aid. We've traced their history from colonial America through that golden age and into the significant challenges they face today.
Yeah, we've unpacked their unique structure, including that distinct nature of fraternal insurance certificates, the regulatory differences compared to traditional insurance, and we've delved into their profound impact, trying to quantify their contributions through charity, volunteerism, and that invaluable creation of social capital, showing how the financial resources from their mutual support really do fund direct action and community strengthening.
And we've looked at the complex reasons for their declined economic shifts, changing lifestyles, the deep impact of technology, and the challenges of just staying relevant in a fast-changing world.
At their core, though, as the sources reveal, these organizations are really about like-minded people coming together with a shared bond, a shared purpose, leveraging resources generated from their mutual financial support through those insurance certificates to strengthen their local communities, both through direct action and building that valuable social capital.
It does raise an important final thought. In a world that feels increasingly shaped by digital connections, facing worries about declining trust, rising social division, maybe a yearning for real community, could the original lodge-based model of fraternal benefit societies centered on in-person connection, shared purpose, mutual aid, could it hold unexpected lessons, or maybe even offer a tangible path towards rebuilding the kind of community bonds that someone like Tocqueville saw as so essential to American life? It's definitely something to consider as you go about your day.